Hi, it's Chuck from Above the Basement, Boston Music and Conversation. Blue Man Group is a dynamic mix of art, music, comedy, and technology. Founded in 1991, this pop culture phenomenon has been seen by over 35 million people all over the world. Inspiring, brilliant, and groundbreaking, the Blue Men, while not saying a word, celebrate life through connection, unique absurdity, visual art, and of course, music. We spoke with resident general manager Jonathan Screnci, Blue Man Mike Brown, and drummers Kyle Harris and Kevin Asmus before a performance at the Charles Playhouse. We talked about rehearsing, auditioning, and the evergreen magic that is Blue Man Group. Before we start, let me tell you about the 4th annual Boston Drum Off that is taking place during this year's Berkeley Beantown Jazz Festival on September 30th. Blue Man Group Boston is seeking the most creative, innovative, and insanely talented drummers in the greater Boston area to compete for over $6,000 in prizes from DW Drums, Sabian, and Vic Firth, plus a chance to perform live with Blue Men. Submissions must be received by September 11th, 2017. Go to bluemangroup.com/Boston Drum Off for more information. You just heard a piece from their latest album 3 called The Forge. A bit later you'll hear Cymbalom 9, and at the end a piece called Alive. All right, here's part 1 of our conversation with Blue Man Group, recorded at the Charles Playhouse in Boston, Massachusetts. Go ahead, Ron. You started off since you got this.
Well, we have a room full of really awesome people, and then there's Chuck as well.
Thank you very much.
And we really wanted to talk about Boston and Blue Man and what's special about this family that's here in Boston, but also sort of globally. And we're pretty excited to talk with different people about the whole organization.
So we've got 3 gentlemen in here now. Mike Brown, who is a blue man.
Yes, sir.
You're not a sad man. You're just a blue man.
It depends on what day it is.
We got Kyle Harris,
no,
who's a part-time drummer. Oh, there he is over there.
Hello.
Sorry. And Kevin Asmus, who's also a drummer. And we'll have Jonathan Screnci.
And here we have Courtney and Jamie. Jamia.
Jamia.
I never butcher names like Chuck does.
That's an interesting name. I've never heard.
Yeah, Jamia. Great to have all of you here.
Mike, I do want to talk to you because you're our current blue man.
Yes, I am.
And so I have to tell you a story. So I don't even know this, Ron. I used to be an actor in New York City.
Is that right?
But I was at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in the early 90s. And that's around the time when Blue Man started, right? Early 90s?
Yep.
So I remember they put out a casting call for the Astor Place Blue Man. They were looking for actors to go and be the people behind the tubes in the waiting room.
Yeah.
I didn't end up not doing it, but a bunch of us did it. I remember I was I was 24 or something like that.
7, right?
No, I was
Like the people to talk to the audience?
Exactly.
The tube talkers, they called it. That was actually like a position at the Astor Place Theater, that it was someone's job to come in, and 20 minutes before the show starts, they sit there at these tubes that are connected to all the chairs, and you could hear the people talking through the tubes. It was awesome. And we used to do it here, too, in the Charles Playhouse. I actually started out as a crew member in New York. I used to set up all the props and everything for all the Blue Men and put them out, and then once you're done with everything, you're kind of just hanging out backstage, and I would watch the tube talker or go with them and help them. And I even here used to run up there as I was in costume, and we used to have volunteer ushers who would then be tube talkers, and I would go up there as a blue man and freak them out a little bit, or sit there and talk through the tubes. And it's really fun because it was a way to get the audience excited, but then you'd also find out where one group was from and then go to another tube that went to a different group and find out where they're from and get the two groups to kind of talk or compete with each other.
That were nearby in a different tube.
Yes, yeah.
I love that.
You could be like, are you Yankee fans? Yeah. And then Red Sox fans? Oh, no. We've got rivals in the crowd. You're connecting them on this feud, but by the end of the show, they're connected by the show. And
that was a dangerous time between the Yankees and the Red Sox, too.
In the mid-90s?
Yeah. I mean, it still kind of is, right?
Well, we've won a few times. It's not as bad as it used to be.
Any awkward confession moments in the tubes?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I mean, just confessing the love of Blue Man Group.
But we all feel that.
Yes.
We all feel that.
Well, that's one thing I
love.
love about this whole project is that you don't know what to expect at any time. And the first time that someone comes into this theater, whether it's audio, whether it's lights, whether it's music, you don't know what's next.
All of you are drummers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that an absolute prerequisite for people to be a blue man?
To be a blue man, it does help. but you don't necessarily have to. I've known blue men that are piano players and they have some kind of rhythm or musical sensibility that then they learn how to drum with their hands through that. Or there's no musicality and they learn it. And it's also the other way around. There could be guys who are completely schooled, trained drummers that come in and have no acting skills and they learn it. But I imagine it would be completely different as a actual drummer of the show. I think you would need to be a drummer to be a drummer.
Right, because you guys are in the band.
We're playing a full drum set up in a loft above the stage, and the blue men are down below us. So the requirements definitely for us in our auditions are a little bit more drum specific.
I actually auditioned to be a drum sub before I had auditioned to be a blue man, like a month and a half before that in 2003, and I had no business auditioning to be a drummer. I can play drums. Like, I taught myself how to play making noise in my room above my parents.
That wasn't what they're looking for?
No, there's certain things that I'm not schooled at all. These guys can do certain things that I just can't do.
Well,
but I can catch stuff in my mouth.
Hey, and it goes both ways. I don't see them riffing on some sick beat and then like catching a marshmallow. You know?
We should practice that.
Yeah.
What about the drum background as far as being in that classic 3-piece or 4-piece band? You guys, I'm going to venture to say, come from those bands as well?
Not really. I mean, I took drum lessons when I was younger for, a couple months. And then kind of just like Mike, I just would go down in the basement where I had a drum set. I got a drum set when I was 15 and just went down and, I'd have a radio behind me and I would play along to songs on the radio or whatever and just kind of learn that way. But I think because of the style of drumming in the show is so different than drumming that you would maybe do at Berkeley or, where you're kind of trained in percussion. It's a much more raw, I think, approach to drumming. So
it makes sense, though. You have to communicate with your own band. I want to hear more about that too. Like, what is that like to be in the cage? Not the cage. The what do you call it?
Loft.
The loft.
The cage sounds cooler.
Yeah, it does.
You're a 3-piece, but you're also a 8-piece in a sense because of the 3 guys, and then you have the audience.
The 3 blue men, the 3 band members, and then you have the stage manager who is also like vibing out, zenning out to the feel of what's going on, the audience, because they can communicate through us through the calling of cues and everything. And then you're totally right, the audience, which is another element that is completely unexpected.
For me, when I first started, it was a weird hurdle to cross to like grasp the different roles that I had. One thing that we have to do is communicate like a band does. We have plenty of sections in the show where we're also improvising as well. So you have to be listening to like your comrades in the loft, and you have to be vibing off of what they're creating and putting out. Just thinking musically now, like when we're playing, you play a normal gig, at a venue in the city, you only have to worry about what you're hearing and how you're communicating visually with the people on stage, just making eye contact, all the subtle cues and nuances of live performance. But when we're with the Blue Men, it's a totally different scale. For me, when I started, the hardest part was the musical theater portion of it. I've done a lot of drum set playing in bands, and that was relatively comfortable for me. When I had to now start making decisions with my playing based off of what the Blue Men were doing, and having to play to score their actions and to kind of be the voice for their voiceless characters, it really challenged me to start to think about drumming on a whole like deeper level, and also to use my ears and my eyes in a way that I hadn't before. Remember specifically, like when I was still training, we were doing marshmallow tosses. It's the beginning of the show. We have this section where the drum set player just improvising like tom patterns and melodies, and then trying to hit crash and snare drum hits when the Blue Men are throwing marshmallows into the crowd. And I remember doing reps of that and thinking like, oh, I totally nailed that. That was great. And then after, the guy training me was like, dude, you were late on all of those. And I had no idea. And it was just like, I wasn't used to having to visually line up what I was listening to like that. And there was like this latency to it all. So little stuff like that were really like a mind warp at the time, and I've never experienced that anywhere else in any other gig that I do. And there's like this uniqueness to it that is really pretty special. There's like no other drumming like Blue Man drumming.
And they don't always throw those marshmallows on the beat either. It's super sporadic, and sometimes they go to throw one and then they'll change their mind and throw it somewhere else or whatever, and you get tripped up every now and then, and yeah, you really got to pay attention.
You used to be, we were talking earlier, you were in the drum line at Penn State?
Drumline at Penn State.
Penn State.
I did some competitive stuff too.
But the difference between just being a drummer in a band and being in this ensemble is that you're drumming along to them drumming on stage. So you're not only just accompanying the electric guitar and the bass and some other musical instruments, you're accompanying other percussion instruments. Is that kind of similar to what you experienced in the drumline a little bit?
It's a really good question. It's similar in some different ways. In a drumline environment, everything is very scripted and pretty regimented, and you kind of have all the data of how the music's supposed to be structured and how you're supposed to execute the show. In Blue Man, we have a pretty strong sequence as far as like the order of musical sections in the show, but when things changed aren't always entirely mapped out. There's a lot of openness and flexibility. There is more, I guess, rigidness to the form when we are drumming as a full ensemble. But the biggest thing that I was noticing when I started having had the drumline experience is your sense of distance. In a drumline on the field, you may be like 40 yards away from someone else that you have to play with. And in Blue Man, we may be like 20 feet away, which is like still a lot in this kind of format. So you have to like have this trust with the people on stage, and everyone has to be tuned in and paying attention to very subtle nuances, right? Because we don't have a visual. In drumline, you have a person conducting you. It's a little bit easier to all lock into this one focal point, but you still have to listen to further distances,
What you just said, you included two specific words, trust and listening. And not only are those so evident, but it's a theme that we happen. I just want to shout out to Charles Haynes, who's someone that we just talked with a couple weeks ago, who's a professional session drummer and touring drummer locally. And he talked about that same concept of trust, who you're with, and they need to trust you. And it's so much is about listening and not about listen to me, listen to me. It's about what to do next. But when you add the visual element and the performance and theatrical element of knowing how to be on with your, not just your ears, but your eyes.
So Kevin, to expound on what you just said and about listening and how you have to kind of react to the Blue Man about to do something and then changes his mind and fakes someone out, and how do you rehearse that? What do you do to kind of get on the same wavelength?
I mean, at first, it's tough. I mean, there kind of is no way to rehearse it, really. You just have to keep playing the show. And after a while, because each Blue Man, their personalities are so different, you really start to understand who they are. And, they'll do certain things. You can pick up on little subtle cues because you know them so well now. And that can help kind of fill you in and, so you know kind of what to do. But even I've been here since 2014, and I still get tripped up all the time because, and it could be a technical thing. Maybe I just can't see them because in the moment they're not paying attention to whether or not am I in a good place where the band can visually see me. You know what I mean? They may drift into a section where I can't see them anymore, or they may go where they're doing something, they're interacting with the audience, and they step out of kind of where the light is, and I can't see them.
But it keeps you on your toes. It must be like going into battle when you're about to start.
That's exactly it. There's so many ways that the Blue Man can think about what you're doing. Like, we could go out there every night and think that we're Jedis, or going into battle is almost like a perfect example, because you're going into this unknown territory for a very specific reason, and you want to survive and you want to change everything, and but then once you get out there and you're actually doing it, you have to think about the lighting, the sound, the listening, the communicating, the speaking, and not literally speaking, but like speaking with your body language, or speaking with distance, or speaking with rhythm, how fast you're moving, or if you're being still. And then the audience can't really contend for whatever they're about to do, but that's the goal. That's like what you're up against. That's magic and everything that you can't really plan for. So when we go creep out into the audience at a specific part in the show, or any given moment of the show, we're ready for all that, but we're also ready for anything, for none of it, because you don't know what's going to happen.
There's so much about this that is improv with a script. So it's like that classic jazz standard that has the head and the refrain and the outro. You cannot do it twice. Any show cannot be done twice exactly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Does that keep you guys in it? That's one part of the question. The other part of the question, are there shows that you talk about that you're like, well, we could have done this differently?
We actually do notes after every show. Every show that I've ever done, at the end of every show, where we talk about, were we successful, what was good, what was bad, what was great, what felt magical, how did we communicate during musical pieces.
And how do you connect as Blue Men? We have here Kyle and Kevin, current drummers, Mike, Blue Man. Do you connect before or after a show? And what's that like?
It really starts when you first walk in the door. You kind of get a sense for where everyone's at that day. We're trying to align 6 or more brains, if we include production folk, on the same goal, same mission. So the better we are as a team at getting in the room and getting present with our thinking, I find like those are when the shows really start to shine. If we're thinking collectively versus individually. And so in the locker room, like when we're getting ready and everything, it totally starts there. We're like pumping music and we're talking, hanging out.
Yeah, like vibing out and joking around, riffing off of each other. We have a sound check like an hour before the show, and that's another place where we connect and vibe out and make sure everything's working musically. And then also a half hour before every first show of the day, we have something specific and special to Blue Man Group called Circle Meeting, where all the crew, all the management, everybody who's in the vicinity gets together and we talk about the show that's about to happen, any groups that are coming in, anything special that anybody has going on outside of in the community, like their band's playing or they have a movie that they worked on and they're premiering. So it's a really tight-knit communal moment. It's just a way to connect, and
it's a huddle.
Yeah, a huddle, and realize what we're about to do. And usually what we're going for is like really hyper connectivity of what we're about to do. That's really special and important.
You do something that I always like before every show.
A high
you
five.
Individually high five each person in the band, and you like make great eye contact with them before you leave the room. I had never played a show with you where you didn't do that.
I have to do it.
It makes a difference. It makes a difference. And to that point, like the band has kind of our own very small ritual, but before every show starts, basically what happens are the Blue Men go out first and they do this section called paint drumming, and they're out there like pretty much in the dark except for a few lights up on like a drum platform that we have, and the band loft is totally dark, and we're always like late to the party. Basically like they're up there drumming and we're still getting our faces on, our paint on, and like kind of hanging out and getting ready, right? And usually blasting rock music in the dressing room. And then we walk up and it's like a totally dark loft and you're just sitting there in the dark. And as the Blue Men are finishing up paint drumming, like it's a pretty consistent routine. Drummer checks the tempo on the click, and then we look at each other and we just do a little metal horns.
Awesome.
Yeah, did you not know this?
No, I didn't.
Oh my god, yeah, it's every single show. It's like you look at your stick player, you make eye contact. You look at your zither player, you make eye contact, metal horns, and then everyone is locked in. You turn back around, and then you kick the show off. And when we hit the downbeat of the beginning of this section called Opening Mandelbrot, immediately the lights go up like on the impact. So like the drummer counts in, and then on the downbeat when we hit the toms, it's like poof, black lights, and everything is now glowing, and you're in this other world.
You're in.
Yeah.
Do you guys know how lucky you are to be able to do this?
Yes.
That sounds so unbelievable. That's like a religious experience you guys are talking about. I mean, you got your war paint on, you're glowing in the dark, you're spitting things at people. It's like, it's unbelievable.
But on that note, does it
truly
so
is.
I want to ask a question though. What's the longevity? How long does someone stay in this?
Forever.
2 years? 5 years?
I've been doing it for end of next April will be 15 years.
Holy.
And I love it.
15 years.
There isn't one day out of all those 15 years where I don't stop at some point and go like, you've got to be kidding me. This is awesome.
It's a benefit
Playing
of blue
music,
makeup too, because you're really not going to change in 15 years.
Oh yeah, well hopefully. I eat too much late nights, so my body is not always listening to me.
You look pretty young. I mean, when did you start?
Stop it. When I was 25. I mean, I'm still 25, but mentally I'm 12.
Yeah, with blue on, I'm 25.
Yeah, but that's
cool.
I mean that's a good point. As a blue man, you have a anonymity. When I put the paint on, you can't really tell who I am, and it doesn't change your face. It makes you look a little younger and a little bit more mysterious, a little bit more general, maybe. Like I don't look like a specific person. I look like a blue man, and we all are kind of the same height, but I get to hide my real facial features behind a mask.
Well, something that you said, Kevin, about you knowing the blue man's personality. Mm-hmm. If you're in the audience, I've been twice. I've been to the one in Vegas and I went to the one in Boston a couple years ago. I can't remember if I assigned a personality to the blue man. I mean, I don't even know. One was more serious than the other or something. Or how
it's
do
mannerisms too, I guess.
I guess mannerisms or whatever you do with your facial expressions or lack thereof.
Daniel, can you get a picture of Chuck doing that? Can you do that again, Chuck?
So the personality for a blue man being totally in blue, you don't have any hair, you all look alike. How does personality come out when that's the way it is on stage?
It's all in their body language, because for us, most of the time we're looking at their backs. There's a good amount of time where we can see their faces, but from up in the band loft, you can't really see facial expressions all that well. A lot of it is body language, whether they take a little bit more time going from one section to the next section, and other times they may do it super quick. So as the drummer and the band leader and sort of the dynamic leader of the show, you have to follow and play to that energy. Their personalities, what mood they're in that day, and what mood they're in from piece to piece, it could change.
The big thing that we're contending with, and the most important thing, is the audience. And when you go out there, let's say an audience is more subdued, and you've got to go out there and get them riled up, so you got to move quicker, you got to be ahead of them, especially with things comedically, because they'll be like, oh, I know what's about to happen. He's going to, it's still funny, but they kind of comedically get ahead of you. But if you ride that line and surprise them every time, then you're ahead of them. But if you go out there and they're a real riled up bunch, especially like a young crowd, you might want to slow down and be a little bit more still and mysterious and creep them out a little bit in a good way, to be like, wait, what? They're actually really right there looking at me. And the band is vibing out on that. They're feeling that energy and that push and pull of like what we have to do in order for the audience to feel changed and to feel the show.
But that's the beauty of it, I think, is that you don't go in there. I mean, you're in there as an actor, but it's not like you have the same motivation if you're just doing like a theater piece or something. You don't have the same motivation as this character in this play. Mm-hmm. That character is always going to be that character. It's improv, basically. But yeah. I don't know. I'm not saying it right. But
no, I know what you mean, because what's so interesting to me is that for 20 some odd years, 25 years, there has been this couple generations of blue men, and they all look the same, and they all do a very similar thing over years, every single night, 6 days a week in many different cities. But the odd thing is that you're talking about individual personalities and the humanness to this.
Yeah.
But the irony is that there's a homogeny, that you guys are the same. And that's almost, in my mind, the beauty of it. There's some paradox there where it works.
We're different and the same all at the same time.
Yeah.
When you get trained as a blue man, you're taught a very specific thing. Like, let's say the blue men are left, center, and right. That's what we talk about them. Stage left, center, and right. But when I first became a blue man, I got put into the right position. And the right position is usually sometimes explained as like a dog. He's willing to just do something and think about it later. He doesn't know why he did it, but he did it. And there's some danger in that. There's some excitement to that, and just a willingness to do it and just be like, what? What's the big deal? And you learn that, and you learn the specific things you need to do in the show, technically, like blocking, where you need to be, how you need to play things, what your tasks are. And once you learn all that and you do the show for a little while, you then run into a thing where you then have to make it your own and not make it the same thing every night. Yes, you want to do that stuff to do the show successfully, but you got to find the stuff that, again, the gold that I'm talking about, the little magic things that you didn't plan for. I mean, I personally found that by letting a little bit of myself out. And I learned from guys in the back, like in the past, or actually all the time, all great blue men let a little bit of themselves into it. And that's what informs the blue men with their personality, and then the whole thing merges. So again, like if we were 3 blue men right now, we'd all be different because we're all our own personalities, but we're exactly the same in our tasks, our goal, how we communicate, what we use to communicate, and what we're excited excited about.
Yeah.
Changing people
Yeah.
and changing
And
environments.
And it's through no words, which I think we should clarify. There's a lot of people out there that have seen Blue Man. I think 35 million people in the world or something. But then there's a lot of people that haven't. And what's fascinating is that it's through sound and light and humor and a kick-ass band and all together, but there's 0 words, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think something that's cool, you know, when you come to the show and you're looking at each individual guy and you're like, because there's no dialogue, you get to write in your own head what the show's about. You can look and be like, he's the mean one, he's the dumb one, or he's the heroic one, or he's the silly one. Even though that's super simple, that's what everybody does every day. And that's how we all interact. And the 3 Blue Men will never disband, but at the same time, they can look at each other and be like, you gotta be kidding me. You're totally slowing us down by bringing out this box of Twinkies. But the other one who brought it out has an idea. So let's move forward and see what happens. That makes sense?
It does. You guys said it so much better than what I was trying to say. Tell me a little bit about the audition for both the drumming and for Blue Man. I remember when they said they were going to audition for Blue Man all those years ago, I was terrified. I'm like, there's no way I can audition for that, because I hated improv. I was so bad at it, and so it scared the crap out of me. So I never even thought about doing it. But you have to be a pretty brave person to audition for this kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Kyle.
The auditions were... I don't know if there's any other audition really like it. So when I was planning to come into audition, it was going to be 15 minutes. I think the stage manager called me, and Lisa. I asked her, like, what should I prepare? Are you going to send me a packet or anything? She's like, no, just show up. Okay, great. And there's no music in Blue Man is written down, so there's no sheet music for anything. There's kind of this tribal sense to that. It's sort of just passed down. There's a lineage to it. And in the audition, they're trying to test a few different things. Your ability, like your brain processing ability, like your ability to listen, watch, and observe. We've already discussed that's a huge part of executing the show. So rightfully in the audition, to test that, what they're doing is just playing parts at you and then asking you to sit down and just do it.
So can you give examples to that? What do you mean playing a part?
So when I auditioned, it was this other drummer named Randy Wooten, who's currently on the world tour with Blue Man. I came into the loft. It was him and our full-time zither player, Scott Toomey, here. We jumped right in, and Randy sat down and played this one section of the show called Drumbone with Scott. And they played the whole section for me, which was it's about 45 minutes. Sorry, seconds. 45 minutes. Seconds.
The show's 3 days long.
It's 3. It's a good chunk of time for something you're not exposed to. He played it for me once, and then broke down a few sections. And he played each one for me, and then just gave me the sticks and said, okay, now try it. And you have to process form, you have to process the part, dynamics in relation to your zither player. Everything that you would normally consider as a drummer when you're trying to perform musically, you're asked to do that almost instantaneously. A big part of it too is the feet as a drum set player are untraditional. We're throughout a good portion of the show keeping consistent eighth notes between our bass drum and our hi-hat. So there's a bounce, like a dun 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 dun, kind of this underlying pulse to everything that's going on, because the show musically is very tribal.
That's the kick that's doing a lot of that?
Kick and the hi-hat.
Kick and the hi-hat. That kick drum, that steady eighth note kick drum with the hi-hat at the same time, you play that almost with every piece of music in the show. And then there's tom work and stuff with your hands on top of that. But you know, if you're going to go out and play with a rock band, or you don't usually have both feet going like that. You know, you'll have your hi-hat, you know, eighth notes on your hi-hat, and then you're playing a pattern on the kick drum. But to do them both at the same time, if you're not used to it, completely throws off your sense of balance. It took me a long time to really get that down. So first, just to get that down, just the feet, and then to be able to play stuff on top of that while you keep the feet going.
Just physically, both your feet are off the ground at the same time.
Yeah, for a split second, like both of them are off the ground, yeah.
So, I mean, you got to make sure you're not going back and forth with your body.
Right.
And
when I was learning it, I
exhausting.
kept falling like forward, and I'd have to stop and sit back up and then do it for another 5 or 6 seconds until I started falling forward again, and it took a while to get the balance.
It sounds like a rite of passage, or it sounds like in an audition that's something that they throw at you and they want to know how you deal with that specific eighth note.
Yeah,
bit.
it's kind of like to be a drummer in the show, you have to be able to do that. Just like to be a Blue Man, you have to be able to catch stuff in your mouth. Like if you can't do that, it doesn't matter necessarily how good of a drummer or maybe an actor you are, you can't execute the show. And so like very quickly the feet eliminate people from the mix.
Wait, just a quick question, Mike. So have you always been the guy that like can catch any peanut in his mouth, like in a party or something? Or Because there's always that guy at a party that can no, go like 50 feet away and chuck a peanut.
You know, it's really it's
Who you
completely
hanging out
true.
with?
I
suburbs, man.
A couple birthdays ago, we were at the Little League fields out in Southie playing wiffle ball for my birthday, and we had some grapes, and we went like 50 yards, and we were throwing grapes 50 yards and catching them in our mouths. I don't recommend that. It's not very safe, but we were doing it.
Well, as an actor, were you acting before this?
Chuck, you were an actor.
Well,
I was an actor, yes.
I did go to school for theater, but it was a BA program at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. The reason I use the term acting loosely is because I've done Blue Man for 15 years and I haven't done anything else. I should use my free time a bit more wisely, but Blue Man's a really fulfilling gig in terms of creativity, and usually when I walk out of here I'm like, man, I'm pretty tired.
But the reason I brought that up is because as an actor, when you have your resume as an actor, it's not like your normal corporate resume. You have to put on that you drive a stick, or you can ride a horse, or you can catch things from a great distance in your mouth.
Yep.
That you literally have to put that on your resume.
I don't put that on my resume because I think being a Blue Man speaks for
you're
itself.
famous for it. You don't. It's like your calling card now. You don't even have to.
But yeah, I mean, like I could put on my resume that I can communicate with my eyes.
The eyes are. I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, that is a huge part of that makes us all different, of course. Yet back to that similar different thing.
Yeah.
Why do people wear ponchos?
Because you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
Because you never know what's going to happen, and we want people to feel safe, but at the same time we want them to feel a little danger, a little like, oh, why am I wearing
stage
this?
Right guy coming out.
No, that's all of them. That's each Blue Man being like, yeah, come on out, sit real close, we dare you. There is a tactileness to Blue Man Group. You can feel it, you can smell it, and you can hear it. It's not just sitting and watching a play and then leaving being like, well, those actors had no idea I was there. They were just telling me a story with a wall up.
This brings up something special that I wanted you guys to comment on, is the autism-friendly, sensory-friendly performance. Can you guys speak to that? That to me is amazing, because knowing any fellow family members or parents that have a kid or an adult with sensory issues.
For the past few years, we've been doing a special partnership with Autism Speaks, where we have a special show where we take away some of the elements that might be a little obtrusive to people with autism. That being like strobe lights, or we bump the music down a little bit so it's not as loud, and it's just a bit more welcoming to someone who might have trepidations. I mean, there's so many awesome things about it. It allows families who don't get to go to things like that to come out finally and feel comfortable surrounded by other people who are all experiencing the same thing, and it just makes people realize, even if you're sitting in a theater for a second, you're like family. And that really is the heart of Blue Man Group. When 200 to 1,000 people come in together for an hour and a half, we want them leaving feeling like bonded, and that show, it just goes above and beyond that.
What is that like as drummers? Do you have to really tone it down? Or
no, for the band, pretty much all the sound from the band loft comes through the PA system in the house. We play like we normally would play, and then they just turn our volume down, so we're just not coming out of the speakers so loud. Any
other groups like that? Like, is there do you ever get, like, I know you huddle in the beginning, are there any other specific groups you can speak to that you'll know that, like, this Friday we're going to have some specific organization there? And
we get all kinds of groups, Boy Scouts and Girl Scout troops, which is, really fun to have a little group of kids who all know each other and they're bonded before they get here, and bridal showers or whatever. What? It's true. You should have a bachelorette bridal showers. I don't know. It's from me, and then the Blue Man says, I don't talk.
But what will you do for will you single out anybody, like a comedy act will? Like, will you
there
single someone out?
There are points in our show where we do speak about some of the people in the crowd. You never know when they're going to single you out. We never single anybody out in an embarrassing or bad way. It's always meant to kind of magnify people in a positive way, in a fun way.
One of the reasons why we're together today is this pretty awesome third year. There's been 3. Sorry, this is the 4th year of the Blue Man Group Boston Drum Off on September 30th that is in collaboration with the Berkeley Beantown Jazz Festival. It is a pretty amazing thing that's going to grab drummers from age 13 and up for a competition. you guys maybe explain a little bit what that's about, where it came from?
So, like you said, it's our 4th time doing it. I wasn't here then.
You did it once, right?
I did it 2 years ago, actually.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity, I think, for local drummers to come out and not only showcase what they can do, but really express themselves with it. And I think a drum off from this company is a little more unique in that there's more creative demand than just like everything you got kind of solo. It speaks well to the what we're looking for, that we want to really see people who can express themselves, who can have a voice on their instrument. Everything we've been saying so far today has really been about like identity and discovery, and that's kind of like a huge part of the Blue Man show. So anyone looking to be a part of this should really be thinking about how they can express themselves in their truest sense. It's a really great experience. Everyone's super nice. Like when I did it, I didn't know anybody, didn't really know what I was getting into, and I actually still have friends who I met as fellow competitors. We still keep in touch and we still drum together, and so it's really like an awesome experience. We're taking submissions currently, and you can continue to submit until September 11th if people are interested, and finals for it are going to be happening on September 30th. Basically the way it kind of goes is you just make a video of your best drum solo or feature piece, whatever kind of works for you. We'll slim it down to a group of core semifinalists, and then from there it'll get down to a finalist group.
Cool. And this is the opportunity to play with Blue Men at the Berkeley Beantown Jazz Festival and also win over $6,000 in prizes, which is very cool. So it's blueman.com/Boston Drum Off.
Yep.
Sweet.
I do want to talk about some of the things you guys do outside of this. And I mean, this must take up so much of your time to begin with. So the fact that you guys have lives outside of it is awesome. And certainly you must be just busy as all heck. Like just trying to, whether you have bands, I think one of you's in 3 bands right now, or maybe you're all in a bunch of bands.
That's definitely me.
Kevin, aren't you an architect?
Yeah.
I always use it as a joke, George Costanza.
Yes. Yes.
He's like, he always wanted to be an architect.
What kind of architecture?
Mostly residential. A lot of historic renovation, addition, and then a lot of new houses.
Do they know that this is your other life?
I don't come out and tell them, but I do collaborate with other architects in the area. So I'll do contract work with other firms, and they're the ones that usually will come out and say, Kevin's a Blue Man drummer. Did you guys know that? It's like they like it. It's like a kind of a nice icebreaker, I guess. But yeah, I don't come out and say it.
Any other bands?
No.
Not right now?
No, not currently.
You don't meet a lot of Blue Man drummers on the street, so yeah. So do you rotate? How do you do it? Every other night, or?
We have one guy named Steve who's our full-time drummer, and Kevin and I are part-time drummers. We're doing each individually 1 to 2 shows a week.
How about if you want to mix it up? Do you guys travel and go overseas and do a show in England, or
We haven't. Those are definitely opportunities like within the company. So like when I got hired, it was to replace another drummer, Randy, who's been doing the world tour, and so he's been gone. This is his 2nd year continuing with it, and that's how the spot opened up for that. So there are definitely options. It kind of depends when there are projects going on, and I think in the future there's going to be like a lot more projects. So definitely a lot of global stuff happening in the next 2 to 5 years. I don't have a rough.
Yeah.
I don't have an accurate.
Should we talk about that's a public thing, right? With
The Cirque du Soleil thing?
Yeah.
Cirque du Soleil just now owns Blue Man Group.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Which is a really great thing, I think, for Blue Man Group, especially as a performer. Cause
why as a Blue Man does that matter?
I think because it's going to just expand more and give us more opportunities, because they're purchasing it for specific reasons, and those specific reasons are to put the show out there and for people to see it and to continue to do what the Blue Man does so well.
So it's really
wowing
growth
people.
more than...
It's growth in the beginning, like in new markets. The 3 original creators of Blue Man are still maintaining creative control over everything. And so they're still completely a part of the company, part of the creative direction. And Cirque has like such huge creative chops. There's really, I think it's like the best possible outcome.
Absolutely.
Really. Like they value the creative work.
They're not looking to change anything that Blue Man does. They're just looking to magnify it and be a part of it.
How many cities are you residency in now? You're in New York, Boston, Chicago,
Vegas, Orlando, Berlin, and the World Tour.
You just named all cities in the U.S. and then Berlin.
Yeah. Berlin was actually
only...
the first international show to open. They've got a really cool theater. It's an IMAX theater, and when you're performing, the seats are like a wall of people. It's awesome. We had shows in
Tokyo too.
Tokyo, London, Oberhausen, Germany, Stuttgart, Germany, Amsterdam. Jonathan Screnci is walking in the room.
Okay, so as I mentioned, this was part 1 of a double episode as Jonathan Screnci was able to tear away from the real world and join the conversation. Check out episode 53 at abovethebasement.com, where you can sign up for our newsletter, listen and subscribe to our podcast, like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, and look at all the nice pictures we post on Instagram. We are everywhere. On behalf of Ronnie and myself, thanks for listening. Tell your friends, and remember, Boston music, like its history, is unique.